Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining. I am super excited to be here. This is called Project Management Communication Tools, Project Knowledge Areas. Are they connected? My name is Bill Dow. I have 30 plus years of hands-on experience in the PMO and project management space. I'm currently the director of the PMO for University of Washington. I was at Microsoft for 14 plus years, AT&T and Singular where I ran PMOs there. The British Columbia government. I'm currently an instructor at Bellevue College in the Seattle area. I've been presenting on project management and PMO topics since 2008. Several conferences around the world. I have conferences scheduled this year. I'm very, very excited and I absolutely love sharing my message. I'm a 4-time author, The PMO Lifecycle, Building, Running, and Shutting Down, Project Management Communication Tools, The Tactical Guide for Building a PMO, and Project Management Communication Bible. So really excited about sharing my material. So let's go over the problem statements. We'll talk about a project scenario. We'll talk about a brand new concept that I created in my book, The PMO Lifecycle, Building, Running, Shutting Down, called Knowledge Area Circles. And I hope you're super excited about them as I am, because I really love the idea and how it gets you thinking about these knowledge areas. And then we'll summarize and we'll give you some more information. Sound good? Awesome. Okay, let's jump into the problem statements. So project managers are mainly focused on scope, schedule, and budget as they execute their projects. They have been for years. They will continue to be. The iron triangle is out there. It will continue to be out there. And so that's just the way it is. But what happens is, I think project managers fail to recognize the interconnections between the knowledge areas when they're managing their projects. And we're going to go deep into that. Well, the other thing that's happening right now is critical, and we believe, it's not 100% sure, but we believe that PMI is taking away the knowledge areas in the next version of the PMBOK. That project managers who already struggle with this will continue to struggle. Right? They're already, I see that problem on a regular basis. When that comes out of the PMBOK, it's going to be worse. So what happens when this happens? I got a customer on a project that wants to bring the schedule in by 1 month. What are the possible risks that could occur? The schedule could be impacted. We've got an increase possibly in budget. You could require overtime. And I'll give you a second or so to look at those. Quality of the product, right? Yeah, so these are all the possible risk events. So, what knowledge areas are impacted by that? Let's do a little exercise. So clearly schedule, right? Schedule is the first one that's going to be impacted because we're coming in by a month. But what other knowledge areas? Can you guys guess? Would cost be impacted? Yeah, potentially, if you're bringing something in by a month. What about resources? Would they be impacted? Do you have to change resources or get more resources if you're bringing it in by a month? What else? What about procurement? Could that be impacted? Yeah, definitely could be impacted, right? You may have to procure resources. You may have to get you're working on a construction project. You may have to get some backhoes. You may have to get some shovels, right? Whatever the case may be, you're bringing that project in by a month. What else? Quality, yeah, things could be more rushed, right? So when we look at that same list, what we've done is we've applied the knowledge areas. So project schedules impact schedule, increase in budget, cost, overtime, resources. And so this is really, instead of looking them as project risks, we look at them to say, hey, what other knowledge areas are impacted by that? Does that make sense? Do you think there's anything else? Oh, there possibly could be. But what we're doing is we're changing the mindset a little bit. These aren't just risks. These are like, hey, there could be other knowledge areas that are impacted by that. So what happens next? On a typical project, what happens in this scenario? Well, the project manager is going to add all those risks that we saw on the left there to the risk log. They'll track those risks weekly, and they'll update the projects accordingly based on what risks occur. Sound familiar? Yeah, perfect. Did we miss anything else? Anyone? Yeah, so let's take another example. What happens when this happens? The project is expected to be budget to be reduced by 50%. We've got cost. You've got quality could be impacted. The schedule could be impacted, could be increased. You could lose resources, right? If you're changing your budget by 50%, what are all the possible risk events, right? So what happens? Project manager adds a risk to the risk log, tracks it weekly, updates the project. Question number 3, what happens when this happens? The main stakeholder is about to retire. A new stakeholder is going to take over the project. Well, what are the possible risk events? Different communication styles, right? One stakeholder may want communications in graphical form, one may want it in text form. Your scope could change. A stakeholder could want more scope or less scope, right? And those possible risk events could continue to occur, and I'll give you a minute to look at those. Make sense? Yep, budget, schedule, same thing, right? What happens next? Well, that's where I'd like to introduce the knowledge area circles. These are one of PMI's most forgotten treasures. So, one of the most important components of the PMBOK guide are the knowledge areas. I can't stress that enough. One of the most important components of the PMBOK guide are the knowledge areas. They're also one of the most forgotten. Here they are. Project integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, right? I'll give you a minute to look at those, but we've seen those for years. They should not be going away. Okay? How many of you manage your projects with these in mind? Let me ask that question again. How many of you guys manage your projects with these in mind? The answer to that question is probably none or close to none, right? And why is that, do you think? Right? Why is that? Well, we just think about it more from a risk perspective, right? We're so focused on scope, schedule, and budget that the other knowledge areas are forgotten. But if they're not forgotten, and that's okay, right? But they're just not managed the same way, right? And so if you look at scope, schedule, cost, resources, risks, those ones, most project managers knock it out of the park. Most project managers do an amazing job like that, and these feel like the ones that are most used, right? And you could agree. You guys agree? So let's go deep and let's change some of that thinking. I'd like to introduce the first knowledge area circle called stakeholder, right? So when we think about stakeholders and stakeholders changing, there are 4 main things that will change: communications, scope, schedule, and cost. These are the 4 things that you're going to go to when some stakeholder changes on your project, right? So let's look at how we want to communicate with that stakeholder. It's going to be different. Let's look at the scope. Let's look at the schedule. Let's look at the cost, and of course stakeholder, because it's a stakeholder. But are there others? Right? Am I missing some? Well, I could be, and if you come up with another knowledge area, that's wonderful. Definitely email me and send me an email and tell me which knowledge area that you think. But really, what are you doing here is you're actually starting to buy into this concept. Because the minute that you see another circle, another possible impacted knowledge area, then this is exactly what I want you to be thinking about and starting to think more along those lines. Does that make sense? Okay, let's look at the next one. Cost. Communications, resource, schedule, quality, right? Let's go around that circle. Well, here are all the things that are impacted if cost changes. Right? Cost to quality, cost to schedule, resources. So now, yes, they're risk events, but you're looking at them from a knowledge area perspective. This is a different shift. This is a different shift of thinking, right? We normally, when something changes, we look at those scope, schedule, and budget. We go, what are the risks? What are the risks? Now we're actually pivoting. Now we're going, but what are all the possible knowledge areas? Are they the same thing? Yeah, technically, but it's just a different twist and it gets you thinking outside of that risk box. Okay, do you remember this from earlier, right? Those are the same knowledge area circles. We're getting you to think outside of the risks. Are they possible risks? 100% sure. But when you start thinking about these knowledge areas, you're thinking there actually could be some additional risks as well. So what are we saying here? We're saying knowledge areas are deeply connected to one another. And for project managers to be much more successful in managing their projects, they must look past just managing scope, schedule, and budget. Now, I get all the ROI and the benefits management, and I get all that, and I've come up with other areas, and I've got webinars and thoughts processing that, but I want to stick to knowledge areas. If these things are going away in the next version of the PMBOK, we've got to focus and we've got to concentrate on how important they are. And I really want you to start thinking outside of risks and how the knowledge areas interconnect as one of these major things change. So here's another example. Remember question 2? The project expected to be reduced by 50%. Look at those knowledge areas. So what do you do next, right? What did we do? We added it to the log, we maintained that log, and we updated it accordingly. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to review the cost knowledge area first. Right, we're going to go through that and we're going to review that knowledge area. We're not just going to go randomly to logs. We're going to start looking at the cost knowledge area. Right? Remember question 3, right? We said the main stakeholder is about to retire. We called out those possible risk events, right? Again, same scenario. What are we going to do? We're going to review the knowledge area circle. We're not just going to run to the risk log. We're going to look at the knowledge areas and look at the possible things that could be affected by that stakeholder changing. Does that make sense? So now what we do is the project manager adds it to the risk log, because you still have to do that. That's still a very important point. But now what you're going to do is you're going to start looking at the knowledge area circles and determine if there's any knowledge area impacts and determine that action plan. Update the risk weekly, and then update the project quarterly. So that component didn't change, but what I've done is I've added a knowledge area check. So how many of you manage your projects with knowledge areas in mind? Well, now the answer is going to be yes, 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 because you're now going to understand that when you just look at the 1 or 2 different risk events, that's not giving you the full circle, and it's going to allow you to really understand the importance and drive that from a knowledge area perspective. So this new process step will have project managers proactively managing their knowledge areas on their projects in a way they've never done before. This new level of tracking will bring much more success to project execution and a whole new conversations around risk exposure. As the PMI makes this step to ignore or downplay the importance of the knowledge area, I think it's even more important now to continue and expose this interconnection for you to successfully deliver your projects. Let's summarize. I can't stress enough the importance of managing your projects with knowledge areas in mind. The interconnections between knowledge areas are often missed and can lead to huge project problems. The tracking and looking across the impacted knowledge areas will give you exposure to risks you may never have thought about. The industry is changing and PMI starts to move away from the core aspects of managing a project. That does not mean it's correct. We have to hold on to what's been tried and tested over the many, many years. And something I'm deeply passionate about because it's a huge component of being successful in managing a project. My name is Bill Dow. I put a ton of this information in all these knowledge areas in Chapter 12, the PMO Lifecycle, Building, Running, Shutting Down. It's up on Amazon. It's done very, very well on Amazon. But all these knowledge area circles are updated and in there for you to review. Again, Bill Dow of the PMO Lifecycle, Building, Running, Shutting Down is up on Amazon. My book, The Project Management Communication Tools, is up on Amazon. Both have been updated this year. Dow Publishing, Bill Dow for Twitter, Facebook, email me directly if I've missed a knowledge circle and I've missed one of the knowledge areas. Definitely let me know, and then connect with me on LinkedIn as well. We'll pause now. We'll jump into questions. Thank you for attending. Thank you for everything, and I will talk to you all soon.